Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Illarion, and I'm going to talk about my experience with Redux and the best practices I have tested. So I've called my presentation Redux, a practical example. And I hope many of you are familiar with Redux. And if you are not familiar with Redux, I highly recommend trying it out. So what is Redux? Redux is a state container for your apps. It's designed to be minimal, predictable, and to be standalone. Basically, you can mix up Redux with anything you like. You can use Redux plus React. You can use Redux plus jQuery. I did. You can use Mithril, plain virtual DOM, whatever you want. And with this universal approach, we have another issue. There are no default configuration. There is no default configuration for Redux. Well, if you can do whatever you want with it, you will end up with your own structure in the end. So I have compiled a list of recommendations that I follow myself, and I think you would find valuable. So first one, use Immutable GS for your state. So your reducers should accept and return immutable states. Using immutable data structure allowed me to really simplify reducer code and eliminate worries about whether I have accidentally mutated the state when I was doing something. It made selector libraries like reselect much more efficient, and it allowed me to store minimal state in the Redux store itself and calculate what I need for my views on the fly. Also, since I'm sure that the state is immutable and it doesn't change because of my own errors, it allowed me to write tests faster. There are other alternatives to Immutable GS. You can deep freeze objects yourself, or you can use, what's its name? The other library. It claims to be faster, and by operating on a more shallow level. But I think it's worth your time to invest into learning Immutable GS. I know a lot of people are against Immutable GS because it adds a whopping 56 kilobyte to your bundle. But there's good news. Immutable GS is going to be split into modules this year, so you will be able to use the parts that you really need. Second recommendation, use Dux or Redux reducer bundles. It was a proposal by a famous user, Ericras, to keep reducer actions pairs in another isolated module. This way you can always scan the reducer file and know what it does and what action it responds to. So this what my file structure for Redux folder looks like. As you can see, the modules folder is for the Dux. A cute picture again. The reducer.js is in the main file where I combine all reducers. For simplicity, I have left only one actual reducer. Here it's metafill.js. It doesn't matter what metafills is. It's just an example. So we count metafills in our state. There is an empty folder middleware because I don't use any middleware right now in this example. And there's types for storing action types. Then all of this is combined together in create.js file. So this folder, this Redux folder, can be a part of any structure. That's why I asked Martina about her folder structure, because this folder structure can be embedded into practically every example that she gave. So this is the reducer the duck module looks like. First, I import actions from the types file. So I have two action types, add and remove. Then I create the reducer itself. So as you can see, the initial state is an immutable map. Yeah. I'm showing to myself. So yes. So as you can see, the initial state is a mutable map. Then I have the reducer react to my action types, to my actions according to the type. And here, as you can see, this single line applies the changes and returns the state. And this is the power of Immutable GS inside Redux. So I just have to set to use the method set, and it's all done. The remove is also pretty simple, and it returns the state itself if no action, if the action doesn't match the types. Then the actions creators. This is the tasty part of Duck's proposal. We keep action creators inside the same file where we have reducer. So when another programmer comes to your company and has to get himself up to speed, he or she can open the file and take a quick look and see what is going where. So this is the action creator for add, and this is action creator for remove. This is my personal preference. I prefer to have some kind of default inside the action creator to hint at the structure of the action payload. And also here, as you can see, I'm generating a unique ID automatically inside action creator for any meta fields that I'm going to add. So I don't have to devise, though I can, and you will see that in the tests. So I simply supply key and title as a payload to the action creator, and it generates the appropriate UID itself. And also there is a recommendation to keep calculated state functions here. So you keep the reducer itself as simple as possible and keep the Redux state as simple as possible and less redundant. And then calculate what you need for the view inside the get functions here. So if you come to a new project and you look at the docs file, you see the reducer, action creators, and the view states information that is going to be used. This is what action types file looks like. The reason Duck's proposal does not Duck's proposal keeps action types inside the same file. Here, instead of import, it would in the original Duck's proposal there would be constants defined, just like I did in a separate file. I have exported them into a separate file to simplify my tests. And this is a reducer test from my real app that is in development now, but I hope I will be able to show it to you in a month or so. So I can import the action types here as well and save myself the time and effort of duplicating information for my tests. I would not be able to get them directly from the reducer file because in the original Duck's proposal, the constants are not exported. And this is how a reducer tests looks like for a Redux with immutable state. The reason I'm showing you the tests as well is that when I started creating apps with Redux, one of the one of the big questions for me was how to test all this. And the more I have added Immutable GS, Dux proposals, and so on, the more questions I had. So I hope this would save you some time when you start working on your own app, because this is a template that can be used immediately. Here I create fixtures for my actions, and then I test if the metafields reducer returns the initial state, how it handles adding metafield, and I have an error, a typo here. It should say should handle removing a metafield. Also, I test action creators, creator functions. I can also I import the action creators from the Dux module, and then constants from the types file. Fixtures, and then tests. And this is all. Of course, I have condensed it to fit on the screen. I write it more in a more verbose way for the real thing, but this just works. So you can just copy it and it will work, or it will not, if your code is not passing the test. One of the practical example is how to test the UUID. I use the library called Node UUID to generate the codes, and use validator library, as you can see here, that tests if this UID is a real UUID. I hope somebody finds it useful. So I didn't specify any middleware before. At first I used a simple middleware to log all actions and all derived state into console, according to Dan Abramov's example. But it pollutes the console too much, even if you hide it under a debug statement. Still, and later I have found a Redux DevTools extension for Chrome, and it's a wonderful thing that shows you the entire history and logs everything that happens in your store, and it's easy to attach it and keep it even in production. So this is how you can init store with DevTools logging in production as well. So this line imports the Redux DevTools extension log only. This works well for productions and development at the same time. So you don't have to generate separate bundles for development environment or for production. You can just keep it. It doesn't add too much overhead, and the benefits are huge. Some have concerns about exposing your Redux states through DevTools extension. If somebody has a DevTools extension installed, they will see all of your Redux actions. But we're working in a public space. All of GS is public, so nothing to hide. It might be an interesting experience to take a look at Twitter with Redux extension, because they use Redux stores and other popular sites, and take clues from them on how they operate with their state. Okay. One important note, if you follow my recommendation to use Immutable GS, you need to add this part, serialize immutable as immutable, to make Redux DevTools work properly with your immutable state. And to combine reducers in an immutable way, you need to use Redux Immutable. So the combine reducers function is replaced from the original. Redux is replaced by Redux Immutable. I'm showing all those things because it took a lot of time for me to find this particular part of information. So you can, hopefully you can follow my steps, the steps in the slides, and build your own application in a sensible way fast. You might not, you might not understand it right now, all of the details right now, but I'm showing you some kind of best practices boilerplate. Okay. So, and the most important questions, most important recommendation, don't use sagas or thunks, use epics. It might sound like gibberish for you right now, but it's one of the most disputed questions in Redux. How do we handle asynchronous state changes? So how do we handle asynchronicity in our state? So we have thunks with the whole callback hell. We have sagas with their magic generators. And I propose to use epics, just like Netflix does. Epics are streams. So if you know streams, you know epics. And that was the selling point for me. So basically, an epic is a function that takes a stream of actions and returns a stream of actions. Actions in and actions out. Basically, if you, it monitors, it acts as a Redux middleware, and it monitors all of your actions, and you can add or transform the some of the actions into new actions, and finally dispatch them into your store. As an additional bonus, well, this is true for both for sagas and for epics, is that they allow you to create some form of transactions just like you have in Postgres. So, so that you can roll back something if some of one or more of the steps in your async workflow fails. So you can just roll the whole thing back. And you cannot do this with vanilla Redux because it's deterministic. If you change something, it has changed. You need to change it again. So Netflix has popularized RxJS in a new way. It was popular before, but it infused a new kind of energy into it. And they have introduced epics, and I dig this logo. It's incredible. So my recommendation, don't use sagas, use epics. When I first encountered sagas and the entire question of dealing with async actions in Redux, I looked at sagas and thought about it as a new level of magic for me that I need to grow up to understand. So it was like a new level in a game that I need to reach first. But then I have read some comments about sagas that they are dealing with async actions in a more imperative way, while streams deal with it in a more functional way and in the end are more elegant. How many of you are familiar or use streams in your work? Wonderful. I really, really recommend you to try it because Unix streams is a technology that transformed my way of thinking and transformed my life. It's an incredible thing, and you will understand my excitement later if you try streams, understand them, and come back to sagas and epics. Sagas, in comparison to epics for a person that knows streams is like, wow. All right, So I'm not going to show you concrete examples for epics right now because async stuff is really hard, and I would like to have a separate presentation to talk about it, to talk about streams and async deal in whole. Okay. So, useful links. Immutable GS documentation is good, but not good enough for you to start reading. For you to start reading it as a first introduction to Immutable. There is a really good set of articles called Introduction to Immutable GS written for humans. And I would recommend you to start with this. Next, you can read about Dux, the reducer bundles proposal, Redux Immutable and reselect selector library for Redux, when you can set your view code to react only to portions of state changes, so and ignore other stuff. In Redux DevTools extension, Redux Observable, that's the official name for epics. And epics is an instance of Redux Observable. And finally, a good set of articles as well is Learn RxJS. It's actually a book, a Git book. It's much, much better than official docs of RxJS. So that's all.